Hi, my name is Nissa Thompson, and this presentation is on Edward Lee Thorndike's puzzle box. Who was Edward Lee Thorndike? He was a psychologist who lived from 1874 to 1949, and his primary area of study was animal behavior and the learning process. He came up with a theory of connectionism, and in the 1910s, he put forth the law of effect and the law of exercise. The law of effects stated that patterns of behavior will become established based on what brings about satisfying results. So the same stimulus will generate the same behavioral responses. The law of exercise builds on the law of effect, saying that the frequent connections of stimulus and response will establish behavior patterns. And about 20 years later, he modified his law to say that rewards will substantially strengthen these connections, whereas punishments will only weaken them slightly. Thorndike is called the father of educational psychology, and he was one of the first proponents of the use of statistics in social science. So one of the main areas of Thorndike's research was based on operant conditioning. Operant conditioning has four main parts, and the last part, reinforcement, can take either a positive or negative role. So the goal of operant conditioning is behavior modification. It relies on the discriminative stimulus, and this is what influences the occurrence of the operant response. The operant response is the behavior which can be modified by the consequences. The consequences can take a either positive or negative role. So a positive reinforcer will increase this behavior, whereas the negative reinforcer will decrease this behavior. You can see a few versions of Thorndike's puzzle box, which we will look at more closely next. So Thorndike's puzzle box has a relatively simple premise. It's a controlled condition in a controlled environment in which he could study the instrumental or operant conditioning in cats. There was a positive reinforcer outside the box, usually in the form of food, such as a piece of fish, and a hungry cat would be placed in the box. Therefore, it would be motivated to get out in order to get to the fish. So within the box would be a mechanism for the cat to open it, usually a lever. And the cat would initially be put in and just look around until it would often stumble across the lever or mechanism by chance, escape, and get to the fish. However, Thorndike would perform multiple trials to see how the timing, if the cat would get faster at escaping from the box with more trials. So the motivation of the cat would cause it to connect the lever with escape and the fish. And you can see the chart in the bottom right-hand corner shows how the starting time is much greater than the end time for how long it took the cat to escape the box. Thorndike inspired another prominent psychologist, B.F. Skinner, who conducted research later on, a few decades after Thorndike. So Skinner was inspired by Thorndike and came up with what we now call the Skinner box, but he happened to call the lever box. It was a very similar premise in which the lever would generate the reinforcement, again, often food, but not always. Sometimes it would be lights or electricity, and it would change it was a more complex premise than Thorndike's. And Skinner explored more with various schedules of reinforcement to see what would lead to the highest response rate. So with Skinner, he had four main types of schedules, such as the fixed ratio, variable interval, fixed interval, and variable interval. But his work was highly influenced by that of Thorndike and his puzzle box. There are my sources. Thank you.